Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. So I teach data science in SRA. I'm also leading a research institute that we call the Institute for Data-Driven Decisions. We have researchers for two fields, and that's the interesting part, from decision science, the psychology of decision making, and also from data science and AI. Okay? So bringing the two together is quite interesting in the key elements that Eric was saying at the beginning. Trust, for instance, the trust you have in data, the trust you have in algorithms, the trust you have and the confidence you have in the decision you make through the use of data, and also, of course, the way you can leverage data assets and algorithms for decision making. So we use this kind of hybrid approach between decision science and data science in research, but also in the programs. And when I see now young people coming to the market, MBA students, for instance, we can be impressed because MBA students now, they program in Python, they do some data viz in Tableau or in D3, for instance. We have a kind of generation coming which is very, very, very impressive. When I see here all the people in the room, these numbers in LinkedIn of data scientists, impressive numbers, we have a huge generation coming and a kind of acceleration of talents in the field of data science. But when it comes to the boardroom, it's a different story. So when we visit companies, when we try to understand what is really, how do we differentiate the hype, the pilots from the reality, what is executed, there's a kind of different story. So the generation on the top is not as ready as the new generation coming. So that's what I want to share with you to start a little bit the day, and maybe to give you a couple of elements as recipes around it. So yes, when you hear the news, when you go to these conferences, for instance, that's where a company thinks they do in the data area. They see them very advanced, AI focused. That's the big buzzword, no? And trying to, or they think that implementing a smart dashboard, for instance, or integrating data flows together, it's easy, right? What they do is a little bit more like that, you know? There is no really strategic guidance in the company. Sometimes they run some pilots, they try things, and if they're lucky, they have some success. No? That's the problem that we have in the companies. Why? You're probably familiar with this idea. In the company, I'm French, and I'm living in Spain, so two Latin countries. In the room, the one that decides basically is not necessarily the one that is more that has the evidence on the decision making. Okay, so the room is not ready, and we need to see a little bit what is the recipe, what is the traits of a C-level leader that is able to precisely to lead in this data era. Okay, so what is the profile of a modern CXO, a CEO, a CMO, for instance, that want to leverage data assets? The first element, again, going back to the boardroom, when you enter the boardroom, when you meet with these people, there is a kind of mystic around it. Okay, it's magical. That's where the magic happens. Okay, so we usually say that a leader needs to have a vision. Okay, he's going to come, he's going to change and to turn around the company because he has a vision, he has a recipe, he knows what is going to happen in 5 years in the sector, in the industry. Okay, in the data era, it's not vision. It's to be able to be context aware. And I'm going to explain why, okay? So, sorry. Context is everything today. And context is about seeing the light in a volatile world. Volatility is everywhere, okay? If you're able to see a little bit the insight at a micro level, at an executable level, in this volatile world, then you start to have something interesting to monetize, okay? So volatility is a new normal in business. We've been talking a lot of Brexit, for instance. There is a lot of uncertainty in the markets. FX rates are changing. So how do you navigate and how do you design a strategy in this ever-changing world? Okay? So that's why I'm going to give you an example of ExxonMobil. So oil and gas industry, highly volatile market with big disruptions and changes in the environment. Talking about context first, because in fact, when you think about these pilots or this deployment in big data and data science, most of these deployments are on transactional internal data. What leaders need to be able to navigate in this context is external data. And I think there is a need to accelerate toward blending external and internal data together. Okay? So that's another story. What Exxon is doing is interesting. They accumulate on a systematic way context data. Okay, they track this data. They have integrated this data into the data flow and the data streams. But what's interesting is that the business management with IT is turning this data into simple and manageable indicators. So they use the data, they analyze in a systematic way, or they process data in a systematic way, but also they are able to relate indicators and variations on the indicators with natural language rules, with scenarios that then can be pushed into the systems. That's that would be interesting. Data on one side, but then a kind of data-compatible formulation of the strategy into scenario that then can be pushed into the system. Okay? So if strategy is able to provide some guidelines, some rules, some alternatives to the people that execute, then you have an interesting way to analyze the information. Another example of context, same logic. So let me my field. So in the field of pricing, for instance, if you're able to, what we call pricing power, is your ability to increase price, for instance, against the current, okay, against the sector. So to start increasing price when your competitors are flat, for instance, okay? So if you're able to accumulate evidence on customer value, for instance, competitors, distribution margin, COGS levels, FX rates, inflation, and turn that into very simple guidelines into the systems to increase granularly your prices, then you have a big, big advantage. Same logic, right? External data that are transformed into the systems, and then rules, simple rules, which are pushed into the systems to accelerate on a very granular and local way for prices, as an example. Okay? Context is also highly correlated to company performance. When you do that, you see that some of these fluctuations have an impact on sales forecast, have an impact on revenue and on profit. Okay? For example, that's what Warren Buffett, for instance, in the context of pricing, is calling, is saying that is maybe the most important element to assess when he's deciding to invest in a company is his pricing power. So it means that on top of the importance to drive decisions, external data, context, has also an impact not only on performance, but also on financial value of the company. The companies that are able to move or to navigate with more intelligence in this volatility are also the ones that deliver a superior shareholder value. Okay? And that's what you see here in the bottom. The slide will be shared on you. You have a link to a Tableau dashboard. What we did, in fact, at SRA is we correlated these movements in context with the ability to increase prices, and we related that to shareholder value. When you see in the green curve, if these companies with superior ability to increase prices have a superior financial value. So going back to the mandate of a CEO or C-level, they are here to outperform their sector. They are here to deliver superior value. They are here to provide guidance on how to navigate in this highly volatile context. Okay, so context is maybe the first element. The second element is algo-compatible. The CXO needs to be algo-compatible. It needs to be able to live together, to decide together with algorithms. Okay? It needs to be able to leverage the learning capabilities of the company. So that's what we know as algorithmic business, your ability to be able to deliver a kind of analytical product, okay, that is going to monetize the assets of the company. And that's the king algorithms. Algorithms is everything, okay? The definition is a word used by programmers where they don't want to explain what they did. Okay? So, again, it's a mandate of companies. They need to be able to build their IP, their algorithms on fraud detection, for instance. Okay? So more seriously, an algorithm is an ordered and finished set of operations to find a solution to a problem. Again, C-level, the executives have a very fundamental roles in first defining the problem and then measuring the quality of the decision, the outcome. They are also the owners, the responsibles of the results. Also, when you see this definition of algorithms, you realize that an algorithm works well in a finite set of constraints, okay? Not in a full domain, but on something a little bit more narrow. That's why if you start with the context related to fluctuation on your environment to something which is a little bit more specific, where the algorithm is at ease, let's say, then you start to have a more comprehensive view of how to drive your business with data. Okay, that's also an important element. That's also the logic. So algorithm compatible means also that you are getting away from this logic of programming everything, of rules for everything. Okay, and like in Matrix, you have two pills: the red ones and the blue one. The red one, you stay with IT as you know it. Okay, programming everything. Okay, and you are going to die slowly by rules and complexity. I have a customer, for instance, that has 3 million rules in the systems for sales execution, okay, in manufacturing company. It's impossible to manage, right? The opposite approach is learning. So using or leveraging machine learning that allows you, in fact, to combine what we call at SAD analytical bricks, okay, like Lego bricks, for data-driven business problem solving. What does it mean? It means that, in fact, the asset you are going to bring through algorithmic business, both in terms of data and data science, machine learning, are sometimes reusable bricks that you can use to pile up use cases. For instance, you're going to start with fraud detection, but maybe the next use case to bring with partially, maybe 80% of the asset you have built for the fraud detection problem could be a revenue management problem, for instance. Okay? So the leadership needs to be able to organize, to scale, to accelerate the design and the prioritization of these use cases, recycling some of the data assets that have been implemented. Okay? So programming versus learning. The other element is that in this logic of accelerating the path toward data-driven decisions, in fact, the role of business has to be totally linked with the role of data science. You have data engineers for data problems. Then you have a possibility to, let's say, to scale up models from the simpler to the more, let's say, prescriptive at some point. But that's data engineers and data science. But at the two extremes, if you see it, you have somebody in charge of defining correctly the problems, the requisite of the problems, in order to go very quickly to the right analytical solutions. And you have also one people which is accountable for the outcomes of the decisions. In the two cases, it's business. In the two cases, it's leadership. In the two cases, we have failures in data deployment because business is not capable to explain correctly the requirement of the problem. Okay? So think analytically about problems in a way that can be solved by algorithms. It's a big mandate of business today. We see that in generation coming, but it's not really at the C-level. One very, very interesting example for that, maybe you're already, of course, aware of that, is Walmart. Okay, there is a lot of elements around Amazon, but what the transformation of Walmart is very, very interesting in that sense with Walmart Labs. Same logic. So you have a kind of big management problem, but this big management problem is broken into smaller pieces, in small business problems, promotion efficiency, for instance, delivery route optimization, which are small domains where, in fact, data science or machine learning is at ease to solve the problems. Okay? So here you have a kind of the data cafe from Walmart, and you see the enablers, the backend, which is the data cloud and the size of the initiative. You have the possibility to solve business problem with data product. Okay, so that's one of the very, very important elements. The last trait of this modern CXO is it needs to be automation friendly. So context aware, because context gives you the big picture and correlates to some more micro decisions. Algo friendly means that you are able to translate a business problem into something which is compatible with an algorithms or an analytical model. Okay? And the other element is automation. You need to be able to think when to maybe create a black box and accelerate and automate some repeated task or problem task organization. At SAD, we are working also in what we call human in the loop. And human in the loop is the way we interact with machines. So we have a big project around the autonomous cars, for instance, but we use exactly the same approach to understand how managers, for instance, interact with machines. So the trust you have in an algorithm, for instance, the trust you have in a solution is exactly the same thing that the driver needs to have in the car in a self-driving context. Okay? So in in which cases, in fact, managers and decision makers are ready to let their hands off of the steering wheel. Okay, that's a little bit the same approach. Another example, so on the same logic, you have elements that can be maybe some custom have to be decided more in depth, but some of them can be a little bit accelerated. Okay, one of the very good examples is PNG, where you have in fact this logical decision making from the top to the bottom. Okay, so the program at PNG is called business efficiency, and what they do, they try to accumulate some data, external data flows, and they installed in the management office, so digital boardrooms, where they have access to data, customized depending on the agenda, and very granular. So they can go related to the evidence instead of debating on some strategic issues. Okay? What is interesting in PNG is that leveraging these data assets, this integrated and very granular data flow, they can not only formulate the strategy in the boardroom, but also push recommendations to the people that execute. So we have, on one hand, 50 offices worldwide, but also, and above all, we have 40,000 people equipped at the execution level. The effort you do to formulate a data-compatible strategy, okay, and use granular evidence to make decisions, is in fact the same asset you can reuse to push notification, execution rules, as we were saying before with Exxon, to people in charge of execution. Okay? So again, if you can formulate your strategy in a way that is going to be defined with a wide scenario matrix, and then push these cells, these rules, natural language, to people in charge of executing, then you have a kind of automated company in terms of decision making. Okay? At the end, we're talking about augmented problem solving. Okay, that's the role of business, the role of leadership. And you need to let data drive the strategic decisions, okay, to solve complex problems in real time. That's what we do, in fact. Both at the global level, the C-level, at the small level of the execution, we need to be able to push very quickly advices and decisions to the systems and to the people in charge of solving these problems. Okay? So in fact, that brings us to two elements. In terms of strategy visions, the trait of the CXO in the modern data era is to be able to go on the right side, closer and closer to the context awareness, okay, to the granular logic, and to the real-time decision making. That's the three traits we have said at the end. Context aware, very sharp on decision, very granular, very local, and also real-time at the speed of the business, which is real-time, right? And on the upper side, you see that these elements can be accelerated with a superior analytical maturity. Okay? So predictive is fine, but prescriptive is better. If you can transform the models into actions and optimize outcomes, that's even better. That answers better the needs of the management. Sometimes, just to go back a little bit, one of the problems of data science initiatives is that they are a little bit stuck in the middle. Okay, they are a little bit in the middle. We are going to deliver machine learning algorithms, but we don't really know what is going to be the outcome. So be careful, because sometimes data science has difficulties to impact decision making as well. In a nutshell, in fact, so this transformation, as Henrik was saying at the beginning, is exactly the same. You have enablers in the company, infrastructure, data engineering, and data science. I'm sorry, but they are, at the end, enablers of the transformation. But management needs to be aware of that and needs to leverage these assets correctly. Okay? It's a transformation. It's a lot of change management, changing the culture, it has been said. At the middle of this transformation, that's what we call acceleration bricks. You need to think about your pilots or your use cases as bricks that are going to be combined together. What can I reuse from a fraud detection problem to a revenue management problem, for instance? And it's also driven by impact measurement. Okay, sometimes one of the mistakes made in this transformation that we go to the first use case, it's the easier one, so you deliver a lot of results, and then the next one is harder to deliver, right? Because you raise the expectation in the company. So at the end, there's two paths. One path, which is from the use case data science to execution, to results, okay? And the other path is from strategy decision making to decision and execution, okay? The Walmart case, if you want, on one case, and the PNG case on the other side. And the strategy, which is data compatible, needs to be that, means that the planning, the context, the decisions, this kind of big investment decision, for instance, product launch, need to be also compatible with functional areas, with decisions, and with smart rules, these scenarios you're going to push into the system. Okay, just as a conclusion, right on time, so the data-driven boardroom, the traits we've been discussing at the end, is something that enables the company to get an acceleration path towards problem solving on the spot. That's what we mean. So we have big problems and we have small problems. The other element is a systematic approach to strategy formulation. Okay, think about your strategy in the way which is compatible with the systems. Smart rules, no 3 million rules, but the rules you'll need to solve your problems. And the last element is think about your data investment, your data assets, both in terms of technology, data, and data science, as a way to get to outcomes. Who is the owner? C-level, okay? Who is the accountant for results? Is business as well. So you have to engage with business in a way, but business has been also to be aware of the need to increase and skill up in this data era. Thank you very much, and have a nice conference.